You used to buy things once: a car, software, music, storage, entertainment, even features inside products. Now you rent them monthly, yearly, automatically, often without thinking about it. And this shift is bigger than convenience. It reflects a deeper change in how modern economies make money. Because subscriptions do something one-time purchases cannot, they turn uncertainty into recurring cash flow. And recurring cash flow is one of the most valuable things in the modern economy. That is why everything is becoming a subscription, not because companies suddenly prefer memberships, because the system prefers predictable revenue. At the surface, the change looks simple. Streaming replaced ownership of media, software moved to monthly plans, physical products gained paid add-ons, cars started charging for digital features, services became bundles, bundles became tiers. The result is a world where access is replacing possession. You do not necessarily own the thing anymore. You pay to keep using it. That shift feels normal now, but it changes the entire relationship between consumers, companies, and money. Because renting is not just a payment method, it is a business model designed around continuity. A one-time sale gives a company money once. A subscription gives a company visibility into the future. It creates predictability. That matters because companies are not valued only on what they earned yesterday. They are valued on what investors believe they can keep earning tomorrow. Recurring revenue makes tomorrow easier to estimate. And when future cash flows look more stable, businesses become easier to finance, easier to scale, and easier to justify at higher valuations. That is one reason markets reward subscription businesses so heavily. They do not just sell products, they sell visibility. Investors prefer businesses they can model. A company that depends on one-time purchases is harder to predict. Customers may buy this quarter and disappear next quarter. Demand may spike, then fade. Costs may stay fixed while revenue swings. Subscriptions reduce that uncertainty. Even if each customer pays less at the beginning, the company gains a more stable stream over time. That stability is valuable. It supports borrowing. It supports planning. It supports hiring. It supports market confidence. So subscription models are not only about extracting more money. They are about making businesses look safer and more financeable. Ownership ends the relationship too early. Once a product is sold outright, the transaction is complete. The company may earn again later, but only if the customer returns voluntarily. Subscriptions solve that problem. They turn the customer into an ongoing revenue stream. And once the relationship is ongoing, the company can layer more things on top: premium tiers, feature gates, price increases, bundles, data collection, behavior shaping. This makes subscriptions more than payment systems. They become control systems. Because the customer is no longer just buying a product, they are entering a managed revenue environment. This shift accelerated because digital delivery changed everything. When products were physical, ownership made more sense. You bought a DVD, a CD, a software disk, a car feature, a boxed product. But once products became digital, access became easier to control. A company could turn features on or off remotely. It could change tiers instantly. It could meter usage. It could update conditions without reprinting anything. That made subscriptions far more efficient, not only for content, but for software, services, storage, security, media, and eventually hardware-connected features. Technology made recurring billing frictionless, and frictionless billing spreads quickly. At first, subscriptions often feel cheaper. Instead of paying a large amount once, you pay a smaller amount now. That lowers the entry barrier. It makes expensive things feel more accessible. And because the charge repeats quietly, it often feels lighter than a one-time cost. This is where psychology matters. People evaluate large upfront costs carefully. They often absorb smaller recurring costs with less resistance. That is why subscriptions spread so effectively. They reduce the pain of entry while increasing the lifetime revenue of the business. What feels affordable at the beginning can become more expensive over time. But by then, the habit is formed. A subscription business is not just selling access. It is selling retention. How long can the customer stay? How difficult is it to cancel? How many upgrades can be introduced? How embedded can the service become? This is why subscription companies care so much about habit. Once a service becomes routine, it becomes easier to keep charging for it. This changes how products are designed. The goal is not only usefulness, it is continuity. A successful subscription does not just solve a need, it becomes part of a lifestyle. And once that happens, the economics become extremely powerful. Subscriptions started in media and software, but the logic now spreads far beyond them. Why? Because the model is attractive wherever usage can be monitored, access can be controlled, billing can be automated, features can be layered. That is why subscriptions now appear in cars, fitness, food, education, storage, consumer devices, professional tools, and physical services. Once the technical ability exists, companies begin asking the same question: why sell it once if we can charge for continued access? That is the deeper force, not the product itself. The recurring monetization logic behind it. This trend is not happening in isolation. It fits perfectly into a credit-driven economy. Why? Because recurring revenue is easier to borrow against, easier to value, and easier to present as future certainty. That makes subscription businesses highly compatible with modern finance. A predictable stream of payments looks stronger than irregular one-time sales. So subscriptions are not just consumer trends. They are financial architecture. They make businesses more compatible with the way investors, lenders, and markets think. That is why they keep spreading. They fit the machinery underneath the economy. The shift is not costless. When ownership declines, so does control. You may lose the ability to keep using something without paying again, the ability to access past purchases freely, the ability to avoid future price increases, the ability to fully possess what feels like yours. In older models, you paid and the relationship ended. In subscription models, payment never really ends, and once many parts of life become recurring, the consumer budget becomes less flexible. Fixed monthly obligations rise. That matters, because a world built on subscriptions quietly turns more of everyday life into permanent claims on income. When more of life becomes subscription-based, people begin budgeting differently. Income feels more pre-committed. Cancellation becomes financial strategy. Upgrades become silent inflation. Basic tiers become weaker over time. The cost of maintaining a normal life rises. This is why subscriptions are not just a company story. They are a household story too. They reshape cash flow at the consumer level. And once enough of those recurring claims accumulate, people feel constrained without always knowing why. Not because a single purchase was large, because too many small payments became permanent. Everything is becoming a subscription, because subscriptions solve a core problem in the modern economy: uncertainty. They make revenue more predictable, customers more trackable, growth more financeable, valuations more supportable. That makes them attractive not just to businesses, but to the wider system around them. The subscription model is not spreading because it is trendy. It is spreading because it aligns with how modern markets reward stability, forecastability, and recurring extraction. That is the deeper pattern. You used to buy products. Now you maintain access. That sounds like a small shift, but it changes everything. Because once access replaces ownership, the economy gains more recurring revenue, and individuals gain more recurring obligations. That is why everything is becoming a subscription, not just because companies want more money, because the system values predictable flows more than one-time transactions. And once you see that, the subscription economy stops looking like a collection of business decisions. It starts looking like a financial model spreading across everyday life.